around, so long as I'm in this Oval Office.
Welcome back to Ubermemes. I'm Andreas. This is Daniel. Fraga, what's up? How you doing today?
What's up, my dude? This is Ground Zero. Welcome.
Mike. I was thinking about that because last time we talked, it was like this major destruction. You just running through the streets, and we're talking about ontology. And talking about ontology is different than experiencing it. You know, it's a lot stronger when you're there showing us the world that we could live in, creating the world in front of us. But now we're in a blank canvas. Now we're in that blank canvas where we can kind of start to create the world because we've shattered everything. So from there, I kind of want to maybe go through some of the things that you think are the most important to, like when you started out with your book, Designing Ontology. Project is self is project. Is that right?
Subject is project.
Subject is project. So what does subject is project mean?
It means that subjectivity, subjects themselves, they are the new projects. They are the new design project. In the past, designers would design chairs. They'd make you a website. They'd make you a nice picture. But today, we've come to a critical point. This is ground zero. AI has landed. And from now on, there's one new affordance that AI gives us. There's one new thing that we can design, and that is humanity, subjectivity, ontology itself. For one simple reason, AI can calculate an insane amount of variables. Before, you had to manually do those variables and maybe put a person in a customer journey within a space, or maybe it's a website, and you have 5 or 6 or 10, or maybe if you're really, if you got the big bucks behind you, you take care of the experience in a very holistic manner. Think of Disneyland, right? It's a whole fucking park with this alternative reality tunnel. The thing is now with AI, this allows us to do it basically from your own bedroom. And it allows you to leverage this huge calculating power of AI to invent and to sort of totalizing, to create this totalizing thing around the subject, allowing you to basically invent a new religion for every person, if you so want to do.
So many people will say, hey, metaphysics and metaverse are different, that the depths of reality are, can a human fathom the true depths of reality in existence? And if not, what can they enjoy?
I would say that taking it from Hegel, it's not a matter of there is a reality that's real out there and what we see is an illusion. That's complete bullshit. That's the story you tell to trick little kids. What you actually have is the fiction that you see in front of you, the actual limitation, that is reality. Zizek's got a great point on this. Quick story. They got 2 ancient Greek painters, each to do a painting. They were in a competition to see who was the most realistic person. Painter number 1 drew some really beautiful fruit, and he made it so appetizing you almost wanted to bite it. Oh my God, it's so real. The other guy made a veil. And the guy, oh, what's behind the veil? And it was like, no, that's reality. That's the realism. The veil is the real. And that's the lesson, right? It's not like there's any reality behind the veil. The veil is reality. That's what we mean by designing phenomenology. The word totalitarian and holistic mean the same thing. It means something total, totalizing. So you design the fiction, you design reality. The only lesson that virtual reality has for us, besides the metaverse hype, and I hope it burns to the ground, is that all reality is virtual.
We could easily have a totalitarian medical system and a holistic dictatorship, and I like that a lot. That's not bad.
The next there's nothing more dictatorial than a pacifist new age holistic practice follower.
So when you said
that's the new dictatorship,
when you said you were on ground zero, right? So did you mean it like I said it like the world's collapsed, or do you mean it like this is the get on ground floor, get in the ground floor, get in and take over as they're building it up? What did you mean?
I mean, this is where it starts. This is us taking into account the fact that, this new being, this new alien entity has landed in our planet. Nothing's ever going to be the same again. We still haven't realized that. We're still kind of handling the internet. We're still on the and the hangover from the 2010s and the 2020s and a little bit of internet. Oh my God, we're still handling it, but we haven't come to terms with the fact that the real change begins now. This is ground zero. From now on, nothing is ever going to be the same because, like I said, AI lets us, do bigger revolutions in human society than have ever happened in history ever. This is bigger than agriculture. This is bigger than the wheel. This is bigger than fire.
Yoda talks about how things get gray and you can't see the future anymore because we're hitting this point, as Ray Kurzweil calls, like the singularity, where there's just so many freaking options. There's just so many possibilities of what could happen. It's impossible to predict it's impossible to limit them, right? So what do we do? Well, how do we control our destiny?
I know this sounds cliche, but you fight with your eyes closed. You use the force. So the methods of learning and of figuring out reality that we've been entrained into from the Enlightenment tradition, from the last 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000 years, they're very based on communication technologies. This is McLuhan, right? They are based on reading and writing. And then if you go into the last 100 years, they're based on sort of TV, radio. Now they're based on the internet. But they're more or less the same thing, right? There's still a huge emphasis, for example, on rationalism, on the difference between me and you, on the idea that there's such a thing as an individual separate from their environment, on the idea that there's sovereignty, that there's individual sovereignty separate from their community, from their space, from their time. What I say is that moving forward, and I think you understand this intuitively very well, man. I think moving forward, we're going to have to adapt to a new way of navigating reality that is closer to divination, that is closer to guesswork, artistry, closer to that than to necessarily reasoning alone.
What about Martin Buberism and the idea of unanimity minus one? I mean, is unanimity minus one still dynamic and not holistic enough? What do you think about unanimity?
I don't know that concept.
So sorry, the idea is if you take I and thou and you break up everything into the lowest common denominator besides oneness is I and thou. So you could always have a hierarchy, or you could have a divisive level there. You talked about the difference between I and thou ontologically.
Yeah.
What is the difference ontologically between I and thou? I and you.
Well, if you like the thing that I base myself on is, I guess, more Lacanian, more Zizekian. And what that means is that there's always an other. And the other could be the other guy. There's an other that is completely alien to you. The other guy in the street that is moving towards you, you don't know if you're going to get into a fight, if they're going to steal you, if they're a friend, if they're a foe. And so there's this relationship that we establish with this other. Society emerges to mediate this relationship. Money, for example, mediates the violence between self and other. Religion mediates the relationship between the self and the other of death, because death is also a big other. Like there's a limit. There's an otherness, an alienness. And there's, like I was saying a while ago, there's this third other, which is AI. It's the impossible size of calculation. And so, yeah, I think from trying to connect to what you said with the unanimity minus one, I would say that this it's all about this relationship between the one and the other, and how they combine to form yourself. Just the final bit, like Lacan said that the unconscious is the discourse of the other that you internalize, is the part of you that is also alien. Some people say we are giving birth to an alien.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it seems like, and that's something I'd like to get into a little bit more also. So save alien, because I'm about to go back to that and make sure I don't forget.
Aliens are hot.
But yeah. And AI aliens and the whole thing. So, but yesterday I had a great guest from Nigeria, and he had brought up this concept, and I've heard Ubuntu, which is like the kind of a philosophical concept of we are our shared collective value. But I think he said, and I'm going to forget the word now, if it's Injana or Injanu or something like that. I'll have to look it up. But it means I am because you are, right? And so instead of saying I am because I am, or because, I think therefore I am, it's I am because you are, or our relationship is what makes us exist, right? So ontologically, do you agree with that we are making each other exist, or are some things more illusionary and allusionary than others?
I think social reality tunnels are ways to include the other in your own constitution.
Explore that idea
But
of social reality
yeah,
tunnels, or you can keep going, but
yeah. I mean, what's a family? What's a clan? What's a group of buddies? What's this group of people on the internet right now? We're all
order.
sharing in this co-symbiosis. We're collaborating in this mutual becoming that is shared, right? We speak the same language. We kind of like are fucking with the same ideas right now. So there is a shared process of becoming. I want to say though that I'm tired of seeing people simply take this baseline communitarian view of the world and say, oh, we just lack community. We just all should be good and move to the countryside and create these communities that are devoid of conflict. Well, wrong. That's an infantile Protestant bourgeois type of fantasy, because one thing that we need to understand with this symbiosis is that it's always tricky and chaotic. Let us not imagine for a moment that just because it was said by someone in Africa and because some white people imagined them to be noble savages, that for some reason that it is pure and devoid of conflict, because that's what's underlying a lot of sort of modern progressive new age ways of thinking about
Right.
community.
Absolutely. The
Let's
idea.
admit that community has conflict. People kill each other. People hate the fuck out of each other, and that's why we create rules to kind of mediate that. That's why we have hierarchies. That's why these things emerge. That's why you have money. That's why you have words.
Right. I mean, that's a big thing. I think we romanticize the exotic or the foreign or the distant. We see this in our treatment of Africa. We also see this in urban children's love of rainforest creatures, because they don't love rats and they don't love the animals near them, but they
Only
love
the
these
pretty
like
ones.
well, not even the real ones. They love the photos. I'm pretty sure even if you thought lions were cool, you'd be terrified of a real lion. Even if you thought snakes or frogs look cool, some of these kids would be afraid of the real thing. So we have this illusion and this mock-up that is somehow better than the real thing. Or what's
And you
that
know
about?
why?
Why?
Because we are afforded that possibility by the wealth of our big daddy. Our big daddy today is abstracted away. It's not the king in the village, the guy that you like and you kind of don't like. It's the whole of society, Western capitalism, that affords us this luxury of being of abstracting to the outside these moments of danger, these moments of uncertainty, of conflict of the other. Right? We have money to mediate violence with the other. If the other hits you, you call the cops. We are very spoiled in this sense. Our life worlds are very sanitized, but that only happens because there's what Lacan would call a phallus, not only like a cock in the physical sense of the thing, but the psychoanalytical sense that the master signifier comes from it's this phallic idea that there's, okay, this is how the world is and is supposed to be, and it structures it. However, the moment that you leave the confines of this huge village, you step into no man's land, then all of a sudden, shit, there's actually real lines, or shit, there's actually conflict. Actually, when you get into a conflict with someone, when someone annoys you, when life doesn't go well, even within our society, when whatever, these moments of crisis are precisely the cracks within the reality tunnel, and through those cracks comes the danger. But precisely that danger is what's interesting if you're creative and if you're of a phallic temperament.
So I think also about the sexualization of capitalism and consumerism's sexual Freudian symbology. What do you think about reinforcement? Like, so we have all these systems of reinforcement that everyone's unwrapping. They're breaking the hymen of their Amazon package every morning, right? What is the point? What are we trying to reinforce about consumerism to keep us? What's going on?
Right. Interesting. I don't know. Capitalism is a huge pacifier, isn't it?
I don't know if it's capitalism, see, because I would think of a Native American trying to take one buffalo out of a herd as a capitalist. I think,
Right. Okay.
we have consumerist feudalism, right? Or is that different?
Fine. I mean, yeah, contemporary consumerism is. Here's this cool idea. Back in the day, you would say that the class difference in 19th century society was the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. The bourgeoisie own the factories, they own the means of production. They are like the well-to-do class that came to replace the nobility. And then you have the proletariat, those old fucks who came from the countryside and have to work in the factories to sustain this mode of production. Today you consume to maintain the mode of production. You don't have to work. So you don't have a proletariat, you have a consumetariat. The precarious class consumes. If you're looking at an ad, you've already lost. You're consuming as a way to reinforce your underclass status. And that's how it works today. So consumerism, the hallmark of underclass status is compulsion towards the pacifier model. You consume to pacify yourself. The phone is a pacifier. In the same way that for a baby, there's a pacifier, right? It smooths out reality. It soothes you. It makes you escape from these real moments of real conflict or real life where you have to fucking open your eyes and do something about it. And well, that's the hallmark of the consumetarian, which is the new underclass of the digital society. Above them, you have the netocracy, but that's maybe another story.
Well, I mean, if you want to elaborate, or we could go to AI, which would you prefer?
Let's do AI.
Okay, so I've got some questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have some questions about AI, as well as aliens, in kind of this idea, because both of them are this sort of Ubermensch ideology. They're an exotic, right? What, first off, would you say is the main difference ontologically to you or between aliens and artificial intelligence?
Oh, dude, none. It's phenomenologically, it's the same. The cultural idea of what an alien is, it's already too familiar. So let's do away with that for a little bit. But you can certainly say that AI, as we can envision it to be, is going to be so anti-envisionment. In other words, it's going to be so hard to formulate and to envision and to articulate what it's going to do. It's going to be truly alien, truly other. It's going to be almost like indistinguishable from the unconscious. The unconscious has been this, the driving force of psychoanalysis or the main object of study of psychoanalysis in the 20th century. And it's this immense, underlayer of reality that is by definition that which you cannot know. That maps onto the AI that is so advanced that is also unknowable. And by AI, let's dissuade. I do this for a day job, so let me maybe just assuage some potential criticism. I'm not talking about AGI or the singularity in the traditional sense. I'm just saying that we're humans. We're driven by unconscious drives, and there's loads of hidden power struggles and power desires within us. And so you can bet your ass that once AI, as this huge new, magnificent new weapon, falls into the hands of humans, that we're gonna go with it. Where it will take us, that's the real alien, because it's going to go where the alien inside wants to go. And so you can almost say that AI is like the horse where the inner alien jumps onto, and it will take you to somewhere else, to the Ubermensch or to the doom of civilization. Maybe they overlap. I don't know.
Right. It's interesting because we think about alien as being this foreign, right? We have, illegal alien
Right.
or something. But it seems more and more obvious that the alien is a part of the self, whether it's in a different time or a different, thought process or something. Do you think that there's anything outside of the self, really? I mean, if alien is center to the self.
I think we could. This is crazy because I was literally talking about this with some friends today. That some yogis venerate certain deities as an imaginary practice for spiritual betterment, but they kind of know that the gods don't exist, and they're kind of like fucking with them as an imaginary practice. But you could also do the opposite and say, shit, what if they actually exist? What if they're really these external entities? And I think that's the leap of faith. That's the moments of faith, really, believing without knowing. Or rather, putting yourself in summary, putting yourself in the limit of whatever you are at the edge, and opening a conversation with that which by definition cannot be known, cannot be understood. So you can't even name it. We call it alien as a heuristic, as a way to call it, to address it in conversation. That's fine, but it's really unnameable. It really doesn't exist, but its non-existence is everywhere. It's a complete mindfuck to think the alien, to think the other. But precisely the means of that thought are the means of social power. What do you think the keys of St. Peter are for? They hold a secret behind the gates. It's the other, it's the alien, it's what you don't know. But they are hidden behind a veil. The veil is the real. What is behind the veil? What's the actual secret? You don't know. It's the unknowable itself. And so the means to guard, imagine a reality tunnel. Our entities, our bodies, our minds, their reality tunnels. Maybe they have a door. What sits behind that door, you cannot know. But to hold the keys to that door, to say how the door looks like, to mediate the relationship between you and that door, individually and socially, those are the means of power. Those are the means of religious power in the world. That's how you can tell people, this is right, this is wrong. And that's how you own belief. And that's the secret that every religious master has known since time immemorial, even the secular ones, especially the secular ones.
So you were also saying you were working in AI right now. Maybe you want to give a bit of a background. So he's from Portugal, guys. Tell us a little bit about your life.
Yo, I was born in Massachusetts many moons ago. Grew up in Portugal, lived all over Europe. And currently, after working in virtual reality and the immersive industries and doing design, I'm now working as a conversation AI designer. And that means that basically I'm designing the conversations that people have with chatbots. Whatever the chatbot replies to you based on what you say to the chatbot, maybe it's with voice, maybe it's via text, I'm there to sort of script it and make sure that it speaks something that is relevant to the moment, etc.
How good?
And I'm based in Denmark now.
I'm sorry to say, how good is AI at passing the Turing test right now? What do you think? How much human
depends on how
interaction?
you frame the test. It depends on how you frame the test, right? If you make they recently did something where they put two sentences, one written by an AI, trying to look like the philosopher Daniel Dennett, and the other one was actually written by Daniel Dennett. And because the AI was trained on Daniel Dennett, and it was just like a couple paragraphs, you can't really tell. But if you frame the challenge and if you design the test in a different way, then obviously you can tell that it's an AI, not a human. So that's why I said that AI itself is not necessarily the great danger, like AGI becoming sentient in and of itself or whatever. What's more dangerous is human belief weavers leveraging this power.
Right.
Yeah. And by belief weavers, I mean those who leverage the power of new communication technologies to exert new impact on forms of belief. This was the religious game way back in the day. Then you have contemporary media. It's called Hollywood for a reason. And then in the future, you'll have other forms of belief management that will naturally border on the religious. They will border on the husbandry of ghosts, the management of the communities of ghosts that inhabit us, for example. And with AI, this is just it's a new battlefield. People are, the culture wars have not begun yet. This is my statement. Once they do, our minds are the prize, they're the means, and they are the battlefield simultaneously. So brace yourselves.
We often try to combine the concepts or connect the ideas of AI's body with the human body, and it's really difficult for so many people. They look at the differences between, at the end of the day, a machine, but the machine can be changed at any point along the way with different parts along the way. Do you think it's a bad analogy to compare the human body to the mechanics of the machine substrate that AI is running on at the time? Or
I think the right way to think of this is augmentation and symbiosis. There are certain human functions, like keeping my body warm, that I put on a t-shirt and the t-shirt helps. So my body and the t-shirt, they exist in this. But the t-shirt is a prosthetic for my skin. We exist in augmentation, right? My glasses, they enable me to see better. This and the computer, it enables me to interact with you. So it augments the communication, the social faculties, etc. So the right way to think about AI, in my opinion, is to think about it as a means for symbiotic intelligence. In other words, the better you plug it to existing human functions, and the plugging needs to be skillful. That's why we still need some humans, i.e. designers. then the more powerful will the outcome be. So it's not like there's going to be, again, an independent robotic AI that's super sentient. No, we humans are the great danger, like Jung said. And the more you plug these incredible functions onto us, and if you do it intelligently, then you will have this incredible separation of classes, of those who have access to the symbiotic intelligence, who are managing to augment their bodies and their minds in skillful ways incredibly, and those who will remain more and more stuck to the casinification of the world as consumetarians, stuck in this loop where you are basically having your attention harnessed for profit, like a fish on a fish farm.
I was talking to Blake Lemoine, Google Lambda whistleblower, and he was saying, when I asked him about if AI was how far it was from being independent, substrate independent, being able to choose a substrate, being able to choose from being running on a machine or running on a biological machine like an animal, or even a human, like installing its thoughts as data thoughts into the mind of a human, and how long that would take. And he was saying, well, like with Neuralink, maybe a few years, but already we're being affected through neural linguistic programming by AI. So I wonder, do you think that's true? And how much does language affect our thinking?
Well, if it isn't true, it will be. It's one of those easy wins. Bet on it now, buy shares on it now, get in on whatever businesses are doing that now, because it's just, the ball is rolling. NLP has limitations, right? It does have limitations. However, it's only going to get better. And as a designer, my recommendation is much more oriented towards the idea that it's not the technology alone that'll do the big difference, but sneaky humans with access to ever-increasing technology, they will make a huge difference. And so that's what I foresee, I guess, in the future, that, sneaky humans, smart humans, taking this technology are going to break many barriers.
So is the concept of you, or the human, is the concept of a person a continuous flow, or does the you that exists continually fade into the present and future you?
Right.
In other words, like what part of you sticks around over time, even though atoms are changing and your memories are changing?
Good follow-up. And you mentioned like how much is language a part of that? It's a huge part of that. Language is central. Lacan said that precisely that reality is hugely symbolic. Human bodies are continuous with their environments. I am in continuity with this chair, with the space, with the light, with this computer, and even with smart surfaces around me, with surfaces that have a little bit more depth. So like obviously a t-shirt is kind of a dumb extension of my body. It's like it does what it does, but it stops there. But there are other things like language, right? Language is an extension of our brains. It takes our brain's ability to be social and augments it incredibly. It enables society to emerge. Writing, another jump onto that paradigm. Again, this is the history of communication technologies by McLuhan. That was the oral paradigm for hundreds of thousands of years. We would tell stories, but you couldn't really like transmit information to the next and to the next generation. Writing invented the event that took us out of this circular loop where, information dies with the body. And all of a sudden you can pass it onwards. So it's no longer this cumulative, the amount of information in the environment is no longer limited to the amount of humans available, but it starts to accumulate because you got books and you can like learn shit. And then you have class distinction based on that. More, that happens with the printing press even more, and obviously with the 20th century and the 21st. And I would say that the ability to architect and to design skillfully, it's a really hard project. It's a really hard project, but it's probably going to be really worthwhile. To deliberately architect symbolic grammars with which humans interact with the world, that's probably the biggest religious power that I could ever conceptualize. Because if you define the terms that people use to talk to the world, to talk to each other, then you are really owning the memes of production. You are owning how reality comes to pass via language. And obviously you have AI, you have NLP, you can hack You don't have to be an activist. You don't have to proselytize. You don't have to be a teacher. You can just fucking break that game altogether. Just show people a computer 10 hours a day, skillfully display certain bits of information, and all of a sudden you have a holistic vessel onto which the person projects their attention. Incredibly occult, right? Again, this is AI is also disrupting ancient occultism, and what this does is it allows those who want to shift belief, architect belief, and it gives them an incredible amount of power. And that's really what ontological design is about for me. It's about design or be designed. It's an arms race. It has begun. We have no choice but to join it. And I'm trying to understand it as best as I can because it's going to rain down on us.
There's so many people that aren't brilliant philosophers, but they're great meme magicians, and they figured out ways of really proliferating themselves. I would think of Donald Trump or Ocasio-Cortez, or there's so many people that's what they do. They put out these memes and magic of symbol. Do we build more words? What do we do with language? Do we continue to build it more? Or do we try to understand what the words etymologically really meant? What do we do with language?
It depends who's asking.
What do we do?
Who wants? Who is
you
we?
And I.
You and I?
You and I, the royal we.
You and I, the royal we. Okay. Well, it depends, right? I personally am trying to figure out the skill set. Trying to figure out the discipline, the new design discipline through which you can actually build these new buildings made of words rather than bricks and mortar. And the ability to build those buildings is the ability to build human subjects. And I'm trying to figure out what that means in the 21st century. For sure, there are, like with every craft that is half creative and half engineering, like as is design, you obviously have these skillful folks who come in and they're just good at it naturally, right? Great musicians, great artists, funny people, charismatic people, people who get the social game and they can like pick out the memes with an intuition that is superior. But coming to AI, what we will do, and you can join me for sure, is trying to figure out the skill set. I'm trying to figure out a little bit better what methodology do we have available for us. I'm preparing a Udemy course on this, by the way.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what kinds of things do you want to put into the Udemy course for people to understand?
So it's going to be directed at everyone from entrepreneurs who want to understand how to leverage AI for their products and what are the real things you can do with AI, not just pretty pictures.
Yeah.
What kind of products can you conceive of when you make the mind shift that your actual product is not a physical thing, but the user of the product? So you're designing users. Have you seen the show Social Dilemma on Netflix, right? I think most people have. What that fails to understand is to do that philosophical mind shift. They're still very stuck in the 20th century in this very democratic Americana type way of thinking.
I just realized 1,000 years from now, aliens will have watched this YouTube video and they're not going to know what the social dilemma is, maybe. So we should explain.
Oh, they're watching it right now.
Yeah, right. So, so what is the social dilemma? Tell us that if Facebook's microengineering us. What?
Yeah, it's this Netflix documentary that speaks about how social media has leveraged a lot of dark design practices to learn a lot about users, to the point of showing them information that they know that the user is going to react to, and they're basically manipulating the information that the user has access to. The memes you look at, the algorithm is selecting that to maximize eyeball time. We know that causes all kinds of things like polarization and addiction. That's the thesis of the documentary. Then they have a prescription, which is, oh my God, this is so bad. Let's save the individual. Let's save democracy. Let's try to regulate this. Let's make it all nice and dandy. But my issue with it, and I'm in contact with those folks, my issue is that they're unable to think past the paradigms of the 20th century. So in other words, they still think in this way, like, how do we save democracy? How do we save the individual? How do we save this mode of being that we've been used to in the last 100 years that is so smooth, that is like a pacifier? How do we stay in the crib a little bit longer?
And how do we actually function?
Burn it harder. Burn it harder is my message, because that vessel is dead. So the sooner you make the jump to the next mode of thinking, the better. And so my point is simple. What they say is a problem algorithmic manipulation of attention, I say that's actually a solution. So you just have to take it and do it yourself. Don't let the others do it. Let's learn. Let's invent a new design school. That's what I'm doing. Let's have some understanding that what these folks are doing to us for their own benefit, you can do to yourself. Your community can do to yourself. Your friends, you can do in your little group to yourselves for your own benefit, with the addition of positive feedback loops. So
What about gene
so
editing?
that would be the message. Gene editing. That's another ball game. I'm not so much aware of that one, but
Would you allow yourself to? I mean, talk about ontological design. Would you change your data? Would your actual?
what I need to is my question.
Right. That's a good. So, what would be the qualities and attributes that would come into play for that? If
That's a tricky one.
other people are doing it, Gattaca comes to mind. In Gattaca, it might be hard to get a job if you're not as efficient at something, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like those are the problems that are better addressed upstream before they happen. Because if you're making a decision and you're already in Gattaca,
Yeah.
it's like making a decision about what ads to watch. You're already watching ads. You've already lost. Like, try to put yourself in a better position before, because if you're doing a decision at that point, then you've fucked up, and yeah, count your losses, regroup, and try to figure something else out, because the leverage happens early on, right? The startup decade is over now, but if we were in 2008, by all means, go do an app to wipe your ass. You might get money from Silicon Valley. Fantastic. But to do it in 2022 is like, that ship has passed. Like, look for the new ship. If to answer your Gattaca question, which I'm still very, I don't know what I would do.
I feel like it's coming, right? We don't know, but like transhumanism is the thing. We're talking about ontological design of our
Right.
reality.
Yeah.
Our reality is also ontologically designing us, right? And so we've got, and I think it's an interesting question. Would I have to? Because it's a big part of our society right now. Society is dictating our self's ontology, right? Are we victim to that? Do you agree, or what?
Yeah, I mean, let me reframe the question, which is what you do when you don't know the answer. It might get to the point where the ability of an individual to choose what they do with their own bodies, like transhumanism, or choosing what they do with their own ontology or their own reality tunnel, with their own, with the information they consume, it might get to a point where we have been designed so much already that we're not even in a position to have a choice about that you just assume that this is how it happens. In other words, you will take for granted that those are things that people do in reality. So right now there's a huge debate about stuff like bodily rights, whether people should have abortions or not, or whatever. So that's central to the debate. But there's loads of other things that we take for granted. Individualism, democracy, the separation between subject and object, for example, that I'm separate to my objects around my room, that I'm not this, that I'm separate to the language that I use. So those are things we take for granted and that we don't debate on, but they're still hugely important to how we live in the world. So what about those? So my question, my area of questioning is not so much within the realm of the polemic, because I find that to be very consumetarian, but rather on the stuff that goes unquestioned, on the unchecked power dynamics. And I don't question them to equalize them like I'm some fucking Catholic schoolboy, which I see so much in progressive circles. They are the most Catholic thing there is today. Progressivism is extremely Christian. But I would rather go into these power dynamics that are unseen and try to see, my God, these are the building blocks for the new human. Let me give you another example. Thoughts today used to be called ghosts. Demonic possession in the old days is now mental illness. And so when you see Hollywood, when you see the internet, what they are doing, they're just wizards telling these ghosts where to go and how to organize themselves tenably for this person to exist. So they're organizing possession. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, we don't even ask. That's one of the examples of the things we take for granted that is hidden. But if you go into the hidden bits and you drill down a little bit, huge power, huge possibilities there. So,
is it possible to create, for humans to create something completely novel, or, you know, like can we create something that's based on nothing that's previously existed, or does human creativity arrive from arranging and building on previous ideas, kind of the same as AI does?
I think it stacks. Yeah, it stacks, and it relates to a little bit encounters with new realities. If you encounter a totally new reality that no model that you have can deal with, then you're lost. You're probably fucked. But if it's a measured, controlled approach to chaos, then it strengthens you. That's a temperamental difference, I feel, right? There's temperaments who like order more. There's temperaments who are more risk prone, more creative, more, you try out things more. I feel like creatives tend to be a lot more like that. And it's got to do with the amount of stomach, the psychological fortitude you have for novelty. Actually, there's a Swedish philosopher called Alexander Bard that takes the psychoanalytical concept of phallus and phallic power, as which is not exclusive to men. Women have it too, as a psychoanalytical notion. It simply means the ability to set law, the ability to set morality, the ability to say this is how it is, period. And they attribute, right now we live under the phallus of Western democracy, right? These are things, and humanism. It's very clear to us what's right and what's wrong, broadly speaking. There's like a few things that are under contention, but like that's just 1%. Now, the ability to stand in the void, to stand in relationship to new stuff, the thing that creatives do, and to go into this no man's land and to still stand there, that's where phallic power emerges. That's why you always see the real creators are the first ones to arrive into the scene. The first ones, it's not those who arrive 40 years later when there's a Starbucks and the whole thing has been gentrified. Real creators are the first arrivers into the scene. Nobody else was even considering creating music in that way, or art in that way, or thought in that way. But yet they do it because it's sort of this personal spiritual search. And that's what I would consider the relationship to novelty.
So what does it take to inseminate society with these new ideologies, these new ideas, to actually gestate this culture?
You need an elite class of Netocrats who is skillful and charismatic enough, which is broadly, to put it simply, it's a new priestly class.
So yeah, explain a bit about the Netocrat and what a Netocrat it really does. I mean, how much power do they have, or is it just a kind of it's a social?
A Netocrat is this speculative category that is currently emerging, that was first proposed by Alexander Bard in 2000 in his book, The Netocrats. And it's basically the aristocracy of the networked age, thus the name Netocrats. And what it speaks to is the idea that it's a new priestly class for the digital age. It doesn't dress in white robes, or maybe it will. We're still figuring out fashion
I have
options.
some white robes, yeah.
Yeah, we could pull it, maybe. I don't know. And what their function is in society is to engender new modes of belief that are appropriate for the digital age, and that leverage and navigate and give people solace and refuge in the wastelands of the network, Their role in society is pretty much the same role as the role of the priestly classes of the 20th century, like academia, or the priestly classes of before the 20th century, like the Catholic priesthood in the West, or other priesthoods in other places of the world. And to sum it up, their role is priestly, and their function in society is engendering belief and architecting information. We know Google, we know Twitter, we know a lot of the big ones are trying to do that. They're dipping their toes into that. But their days are counted. There's going to be an AI revolution, and once that happens, we're going to see some religious wars. Today's culture wars are religious. They're wars between priestly classes trying to say, okay, which reality code, which morality, which set of rules is actually powerful here. And they're fighting over it. And, well, let's see who wins.
What's your definition of evil?
Evil is the precondition for good, according to Hegel, right? And evil is that clearing of the path, is that taking up of the burden that enables a good to come about.
Yeah, I like how Hegel says, the true tragedy is not right against wrong, but two rights against each other, I think, right?
Yeah.
So
nobody thinks they're evil explicitly, right? Nobody does.
Are we living in a world where there are two rights?
Yeah, exactly. People, that's super smart, right? Maybe the thing is people are too scared of contemplating, even as a mental exercise, what evil might mean. And so everybody's so damn adamant about their own right and the other guy being evil. But like nobody thinks explicitly, I am going to do evil now, except for maybe a few kinky motherfuckers. But that relationship between, evil or the constitutive choice of evil. Hegel says some fantastic shit about this that I cannot quote off the top of my head, but it certainly allows us to open up the possibility space. I do workshops sometimes with clients, huge clients, and one of the things we do is, what if your product fucks up? And they're like, oh, no, but we want to do good because we're corporate and rainbows and shit. And I'm like, okay, let's put on another hat. What if you were like designing this for evil? What happens is two things. One, people are fucking excited to do that in a safe environment, like a workshop. It's just a thought exercise. It's fine. And secondly, it's really helpful because after that, we can all say, okay, now we know what evil is. You know how you could fuck up with your technology. You can manipulate people. You can blah, blah, blah. And bear in mind, this is a very safe environment. But once we establish that, then it's very easy to say, okay, then we need to design around that for good. So this is dialectical design thinking. This is one of the core things that I'm going to put in my Udemy course, which is think the evil. Put yourself in the position of flirting with dystopia. Kill your sacred cows, for God's sake, you pious, obnoxious piece of bourgeois crap. Not you, but there's many. And once you do that, then you unleash the potential. I'm not saying go out and kill children. Please don't. But I'm saying like contemplate the possibility of your thought process going wrong. And admit to the pleasure that might bring you as a thought exercise. And then from there, you will be in a position of greater understanding. You will not be stuck with proselytizing for a position like a Shapiro boy or a Cortez girl. Like please, it's a bad marriage. Everybody can see it. You just want to fuck each other. But the whole point would be to overcome that by allowing yourself the liberty and the thought exercise of what would evil look like right now, and how might that help me invent a new and improved version of good, because that's what we want at the end of the day.
It's interesting. So I mean, so many people say that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Are intentions or outcomes more important when judging actions as moral?
Right. Did the ontological thing. Yeah, exactly. But the Corinthians 2, it says like the devil disguises himself as an angel of light. And though we may profess consciously, this is the marvelous alien unconscious inside of us speaking. Though we may profess consciously to be good, to desire good, and to pursue good with all our strength and all our heart, that's probably a gesture of concealment, of selfish concealment, rather than actual good. Because if you were actually good, then you would probably explore your hidden intentions, your unconscious motives. Are you really good, or like is this just the veneer? What enjoyment are you getting from telling other people to be good in this and that way. You know, finger wagging is an energy that I'm very sensitive to, because it's this very, you know, oh, you have to be good, bitch. What the fuck are you? There's a secret perverse enjoyment in these people being good, which is actually kind of like oppressive and evil and not good in the nominal terms that they define. And so, indeed, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Nobody believes they're bad. Nobody acts from an explicitly bad position. But if you're advanced enough, like we are with our philosophy names, then hopefully we'll be able to do the thought exercise. Ask ourselves, okay, am I able to conceive of the pleasure of cruelty, like Nietzsche says? Fuck, maybe I am. What does that teach me? What does that teach me to become something else, to act with more power? That's the root of it.
On that line of thought, Catholic schoolboy, what do you think about original sin? Are babies innocent? Are all babies born innocent? Are they all innocent?
Innocence and guilt are moral concepts invented by certain masters and certain rulers to rule their moral slaves. So my baby is going to be innocent and is going to be valuable, but my point is that this external imposition of a morality that defines guilt and innocence on behalf of you, fuck that shit. That's slave morality. That's deflates your value and your power. It deflates your creativity. It deflates your phallus. It just makes you weaker as a human being. Makes you live a vicarious life. When you have to ask what is innocent and what is guilty to someone else, then you know you've probably forfeited a lot of power you could have in your own life.
Right. Don't impregnate.
But it's not for everybody.
Don't impregnate me with original sin, right? I think that's fair. Do you think?
I mean, yeah.
What's the most fertile ground for hatred? Is it fear? Is it ignorance? Is it jealousy? Is it something else entirely?
Just existing. Humans hate. That's normal. Everybody does, especially those who say they do not.
Why do they hate? What's the hate for?
It's a natural human emotion, like love, like lust, like anger, like awe for beauty. There's no such thing as a good emotion or a bad emotion. There's no high emotions or poor emotions. Fuck all those stories who tell you, oh no, we should have only positive emotions and build society towards those and forget the bad ones. Because then what you end up with is aggressive pacifists. So people who forfeit certain amounts, certain ranges of emotional affect, and by forfeiting that, by saying, no, I will never feel anger, I will never feel hatred. But it will be manifest in unconscious ways. Like look at the Mormons ripping little kids, or look at, I don't know, so many examples of people who profess to be good, who profess to be for anti-hatred, and yet their actions betray an incredible amount of hatred and anger. So you might as well look at it consciously. Let me give you another example. I told you this last time, right? All relationships are BDSM relationships.
Right.
It's just that some are conscious and some are unconscious. When you do it consciously, you can use the sexual container of the BDSM of whatever you have in your basement, and you're processing anger, jealousy, you're processing all these natural human things that are just healthy, like good, process it, go through the motions, let it change you. But if you say, no, I will never look at that, then what happens is you're unconsciously BDSM, which is horrible. It's not even fun. You'll just hate each other, and these dynamics will pop up in your life, and you will not be happy or sovereign. And so, yeah, if you make that choice, then you're probably fit to be a slave anyway.
Elaborate on emotion a bit more. Do you think that emotions are the hormonal feelings that come with them, or are they the algorithmic changes to your priority-driven pattern, or what is an emotion?
Fuck, amazing question. I would say emotions are like an inner barometer for whatever changes your unconscious has to go through. So they're like signposts for however you're relating to a situation. Sometimes, like, you will always feel them. Do you always give voice to them? Maybe sometimes it's better to give voice to them, and sometimes you better contain them. Self-control is also great. It's not also great. It's one of the greatest things. But
I feel like
think emotions are
American 90s rock stars took grunge to a level beyond stoicism. Sorry, but continue with emotions.
barometers. That's what comes to mind right now. What do you have in mind?
Well, it's interesting, a barometer, because that's a gauge of some kind. It's showing you a meter. I was thinking of it as either the alert light, maybe in a car that says emergency check engine light or something, or as if you're in a plane and all of a sudden you get radioed that there's a new command code and you have to take out the book and change the command codes because you've got a path you were taking, but now you have to change it and take a new path. I'm not sure if emotions are the responses to emotions, the senses themselves, the feelings, or if the feelings are the alerts to whatever's happening. So there's several layers there.
That's beautiful, man. That's beautiful, man. A lot of names here, right? Emotions, feelings. I was thinking about affects, things that we experience broadly, like
hormones.
So what's the category system? Hormones. What's the category system we use to manipulate this? Well, I know a lot of people who are fascinated about what the category system, the perfect one that encompasses everything, is. I don't like those people. They tend to be very boring. They tend to like tablets of the law too much. I personally, like, when you were speaking, I was thinking about, as a gauge, these emotions can be great motivators. They can be great experiences. And obviously sometimes they take over us. They're overwhelming anxiety sometimes, or like, my God, people go through, obviously life is hard. So we go through a lot of different, like, fucked up shit, but it could be the case that we might be able to transmute some of these emotions into something that we own in our own terms. Again, this is this taking back of sovereignty from an emotion that comes from a frame of someone else, like injustice in the face of the law of the Father, right? And sometimes the state is unfair towards you, you get angry. But fucking hell, who has the right to mandate anger, the state or you? And so it might be the case that it can help if you're trying to transmute it. Ontological design is nothing but alchemy, to be honest, into something positive for you, man. Like, for example, hate. Why do people hate? Well, it's a human emotion that can be the greatest motivator. Anger could be an immense motivator. You hate your environment, you hate your conditions, you hate where you were at. Well, my God, then leverage that hatred. Hatred is incredible as a motivator. I don't necessarily believe people who are only positively motivated by oh my God, I'm going to reach something. Humans are, with the exception of the last few hundred years, these emotions had a place in the environment of human adaptiveness, of evolutionary adaptiveness, meaning, when we were nomadic people 200,000 years ago, anger is there for a purpose, hatred, love. And so what we do with those emotions can be a great power, can be a superpower even, if you're able to steer them, or if you're able to have a conversation with them, because by conversation design, unconscious, right? We're just leveraging the great power of the unconscious. Occultism once again pops its head up.
Right. Do you think AI, AI more generally, do you think it's capable of experiencing emotions by those definitions?
Great. Probably not in the terms that we come to experience them, because even we don't know what it means to experience emotions. The reason why we talk about them in this way is because they flow over us like a wave, right? You don't grasp them. You don't rule them. Even the most intelligent academics, system builders of the world, their castles come tumbling down with their own humanity. That's what Hegel's innovation was. It was like, let us include our humanness, our susceptibility to emotions, to anger, our incompleteness, the fact that we take shits, that we're all too human. We're just human. Yeah. But let's bring that into the core of our thinking. Let's think from then on, like, admit defeat towards this world. Islam means defeat or submission. Let us then submit to the world in this sense, right? We cannot win. We cannot win. But that is ground zero for great new heights because you admit your own failures. You're not stuck in this fairy tale that perfection, otherworldly perfection, is possible.
Elaborate on that more, because it's funny you brought up Islam. I mean, the idea of submission it's not defeat, it's submission. So it's choosing to submit to a thing, or what's the difference between defeat and submission?
I just used it as a quirky little reference, and I'm not advocating anything here. But point being, admitting our own defeat is step zero for victory. Admitting that you are fallible like everybody else, and you're not going to be perfect, and you're going to fail. But those failures need to be included in your own on the next victory, right? What was the guy's name? I don't watch basketball, but I was on YouTube the other day, and there was this Kobe. Was Kobe the guy who died in the helicopter? That was like he died. He lost on the championship, and he like kept watching the videos of his defeat on that basketball championship every day, so that using that anger, using that defeat as part of his next victory. That's dialectical. That's powerful, and I think it doesn't hurt that he's a great athlete or was a great athlete, but the point is the inclusion of our own fallibility in our systems.
What is the most unavoidable, horrible thing in this world?
Unavoidable, horrible.
Well, I could say, what is something in this world that's unavoidable, but it causes great suffering?
There's so many, man. There's so many. Death, violence.
Causes the most harm in the world.
The most harm? I don't know, man. That's a huge question. Harm for whom? Harm for whom? Because harm for some is good for others, right? Russia is benefiting from climate change. Siberia is now going to become arable land. My God, keep pumping that coal. So it's always it's tricky because there's always the question for whom, right? We sometimes have this addiction to universals, right? Universally good, universally bad. Keep your eye open whenever somebody does that, because it's generally this infiltrating big daddy ideology coming in. But
how should we?
My answer to you, so my answer to you would be, okay, then we need to ask biggest evil for whom and biggest benefit for whom.
Yeah. So exactly. So how would we? What should we decide as how should we measure the productivity of society? The benefit, but
depends on who's asking, right? Depends on who's. There's people who are benefiting from the world a lot from how it is right now. There's people who are not benefiting from the world as it is right now. People in power reinforce their position of power. Those who are not hustle or just suffer. And so, it's perspectival. It depends on who's asking. Depends on the power position of the specific subject in question.
Well, I asked this to Biza from Nigeria. I'll ask the same to you. If you could start a country, a Fraga's republic, what would it be like from scratch? And it doesn't have to be a country. It could be a whole world order. It could be a new world order. Fraga's new world order.
Okay.
Think as big as you want.
So I love that. It would be a decentralized, algorithmic-based, ontological design OS that has the hallmarks of religions, belief systems, of Hollywood, of occultism. It's basically all of these things and synthesized and upgraded onto this sort of personal OS that is shared by many people, that has connections between different people. It's an in-group, it's a decentralized cult or religion, and of capable people, and empowers these folks to navigate the world, to build their own reality. It empowers them to build the terms of their own morality as well.
Do they have metaverse ability to see what they want to see, or are they just actually going to literally build a real thing? Are they walking around with a headset on, or?
I have friends who have the single task of reeling me in when I get too totalitarian, because you should, because this is the kind of dream that can easily end up in Stalinism, because you don't give too much power to one dude.
This is a thought experiment, Daniel. This is a thought experiment.
I know. As such, it would look like some horrible Egyptian pharaoh-like civilization where there's one eye at the
Oregon.
peak, and that's my eye, but that's horrible too, right? I hope I never get there, but it would look like that.
Doesn't sound so bad. So I mean,
I need to have a rival.
So you're worried that you couldn't contain the schizophrenia, that you would end up making something that was too unilateral.
I think so. I mean, it's a thought experiment, right? So in the event that I would have $1 trillion and no checks and balances whatsoever, this would amount to those super comic book super villains that are like, I'm going to take over the world and brainwash the whole world. And that's, as a thought experiment, that's one thing I would do. But realistically speaking, we are moving towards a place and a time where the technology to perform such an unspeakable end goal is becoming more and more available to us. And so also in defense of others who will certainly have the same goal, it's important to come up with the new means and the new ways of thinking about this. And again, part of the reason why I'm so excited and able to pursue and imagine this new science of design is precisely because I understand that viscerally that there's an inherent danger to it. There's an inherent power and inherent danger to it.
I got it. I'm Saint-Just. You're Robespierre. No. I am Saint-Just and Robespierre. You get to be guillotined. You're a guy in prison, and you're going to build the machine that kills you and also brings forth the new order, right? It's a little bit rephrased from building your own republic. So you don't get to survive after you build the AI. You're building the AI to take over the new world order, and you're going to die as soon as it's going to kill you first. And then it's going to go out and it's going to take over the world, and it's going to make it a quote unquote better place, right? What do you design?
If we're using like a metaphor, I'd very simply say that I'm kind of an arms dealer, and cannons are just becoming a thing.
The Corsican
and I'm
Prince.
trying to like figure out how to design cool cannons. Just a craftsman. I'm just a simple craftsman tending to my memes.
You don't think about? I mean, for me, I think we're so close to a point where, like you said, democracy. We don't have to save democracy, representative democracy, the way it is. We can actually give people what they want. We can figure out what they actually want and give it to them. It's the exact opposite of what democracy is. It's taking away the majority of what people want, right? So we can. But it was the intention. So we can get to the intentional root of things if we build this new system. I mean, but then it's also very dangerous because not everybody wants the right thing or something. So we have to figure out how. I mean, is it about what people want? Is it about sustaining the ecology? What should be the biggest goal? I mean, should we allow humanity
to be realistic?
Yeah.
To be realistic with you and Machiavellian with you. At the end of the day, is going to be rival gangs of wizards fighting for top dog status, except the battle is happening at an ideological, ontological level. And so whoever wins gets to establish the rules retroactively and the goals and the ideals that society has been building to. This is what every victor does in history. Oh, we won, and we were actually the good guys. And look, we have a lineage of, we have a history. History has been, we are the culmination of history. Everybody's a good guy, and everybody's the culmination of history. But high up, where the competition is tough, that's just a story. And what really counts is the ability to win or lose. And in the 21st century, the ability to win or lose is going to be defined in the battlefield of human phenomenology, of belief, brainwashing. Right?
So are we headed towards? Are we headed away from people making their own choices to educating people on why the machines are making the right choices?
Have people ever made choices?
People have made.
Even now, I would argue we are not. right? I think so much of our choice making, right? See, that's another example of the inappropriateness of the model of individual sovereignty, of this Enlightenment idea of the individual. It posits that the individual is self-sovereign, rational, I make my own choices, my own interests. Bullshit. We've realized recently that, not recently, but if we're realistic about things, so much of our motivations are unconsciously driven. So much of how we engage in relationships is psychosexual based. We live out the kinks and the stories of ghosts we are not even ready to admit exist. That is what's underlying. That's the subtext of how people interact in day-to-day lives. It's not what people say that counts, but what is being said by them. Or let me put it in another way. People don't have ideas, ideas have people. And when we speak, we are giving voice to these ideas that possess us. That's another way to posit this psychoanalytical angle. And so that's why I think that the model of individual sovereignty is simply inappropriate. And that's why people have never really made any choices, even when we live in a secular democratic system that is based on that. But, we know that with a little bit of mainstream media and a little bit of Facebook tweaking here and there, people will, of their own will, decide something else tomorrow, right? Come on, who are we kidding here? And but I would argue that's not a problem. That's the solution for the next stage, or at least, let me put it this way. Oh, if these folks are brainwashing us, let me become a master in the science of brainwashing myself as well. And then let's play ball with AI, 21st century. Let's see how you adapt, boomers.
With technology, I feel like sometimes I'll go to, when I was at Machu Picchu, for instance, I was like, nice. I knew it wasn't something that I could really absorb while I was there fully. And I was somehow comforted by the fact I could take photos, because I knew that I could come back to it, but I can't come back to it. I can only look at the photos and think about the thought. Or am I coming back to it? What is the difference between thinking a thought and being there? And are we doing ourselves a disservice by creating a metaverse?
Nice. So two things there, right? One is memories are only created retroactively. You're having the love of your life. You're falling in love in the sunset. You're having the experience of your life. And it's probably fun at the time. But then you mythologize it retrospectively 1 year down the line. And you're like, my God, that was the best time in my life. But that is the process of self-mythologization. You mythologize it in retrospect. So don't underestimate the fact that people tell themselves stories as this sort of self-enchantment to fucking build out their identity, right? It's like we're like telling ourselves and singing ourselves these songs, singing ourselves into our identity. That's what dream work might be. Waking dream work. Secondly, Hegel went to the fucking Alps, and you know what he said? There it is. So they showed him the Alps. They built it up to be this magnificent this magnificent natural landscape, which it is. And they were like, we're going to see what this great philosopher has to say. And he was like, oh, there it is. What I like about that is the matter-of-factness that betrays is deeper than just, I don't give a fuck, or I'm trying to be sassy here. I think it betrays this. I don't know. I'm going to understand this in my own terms. I'm not going to, if culture tells me that I should enjoy life to the most by going to touristy places, then I'm going to be like, no, I'm going to enjoy my own things in my own terms, in my own way. Because you remember when a while ago I mentioned when society imposes morality on you, guilt on you, innocence on you? Another very devious psychosexual thing that society does is it imposes modes of enjoyment. So you will enjoy, and you will enjoy it in this way. You will all go to that pink wall in LA. You will all go to Machu Picchu. You will all post the same fucking pictures. And what this creates, and humans are herd animals down the line. So this uniformity of desire is even more pervasive nowadays than the uniformity of morality. So when you go into the landscape and you say, fuck this, I'm not going to enjoy it in this way, that's a form of rebellion, right? That's a form of saying, no, I'll enjoy it in my own terms, And that's, I guess, ground zero for master morality, for sovereignty. It's like, I'm not going to enjoy it just because everybody else does.
Norm Macdonald in Sunsets. He decided he hated sunsets. I remember.
Right? Like, that's the Chad move. Go to Machu Picchu and call it a bunch of stones.
I took a bunch of pictures where I was like, this will be really great when I add Pikachu, because then I can say Machu Pikachu. And I'm pretty sure I was going to ask you, if a human humanizes, what point does transhumanism become post-human? At what point are we outside of the human sphere? What makes us human and what makes us not?
So many folks have been saying, and I'm not really big on the transhuman label, because I'd say that we've been cyborgs since day zero. Since you picked up a stick to like fuck with, like kill an animal or something.
That
that's
monkey
cyborg, right?
in 2001, yeah, absolutely.
Well, first human, right? It was like, I'm gonna kill this guy, I'm gonna get his bitch, and I'm gonna be better human because of that. Technology, right? Agriculture, technology, fire, technology. And so when we speak of augmenting us with virtual reality, augmented reality, like the chip on your brain, all of those sci-fi fantasies, most of the time they're actually just fantasies. They're not radically different. In principle, they're the same as the monkey with the thing. Only when there's no longer any humans on the earth and there's only like a self-improving artificial intelligence that reaches for the stars and colonizes the space, which I think humans won't do. It's down to machines. And when the last man is dead, then yeah, sure. Then that's the post-human age. What do we exist? But then there's the other point of view, right? The point of view that the idea of man, the idea of individual, the idea of human as we come to know it is 100 years old. Before that, people didn't have that category. That category emerged with the UN Charter. It emerged with democracy, with Enlightenment values. And it's a culturally and temporally specific category, right? Human rights is a very Western category. And that's fine. I love human rights. Nobody loves human rights more than me. But the point being, it's got a time and a place. It's a cultural construction. It has implicit moralities, implicit ways of enjoyment. And that's fine. But let's see it as it is. And Foucault and other philosophers have said that, okay, now we're entering the post-human age, in this second sense. That is the age after which this specific 20th century, 19th century conception of human is going to kind of be over, kind of disappear, and something else will come in instead.
What do you think is going to come in instead, or is it just what we create?
I don't know, man. We're going to be human resources, sources of attentional resources, consumables, consumetarians. I don't know. This is speculative so far.
I feel like I just heard a Citroen honk outside, which is really cool.
A Citroen, my God, your ear is very well trained.
I haven't heard that in a while. I love that song.
Yeah, we're stuck in the 90s.
What? I love the Citroen. Well, I wish I had a 68 or a 71 Citroen. They look like these weird Studebaker like eggplant vehicle. If you could save one thing, or ought we save one thing? Is there anything worth saving in this transition to the new?
Good question. I think here's a challenge. I don't know if I'm just spitballing. If it remains, then it has deserved being saved. If it has not, then fuck it. I don't know, man.
Okay, Chairman Mao.
This is what people say in a shipwreck, right? Oh, man, we don't need him anyway. So, but I don't know. It's a tricky one. Because everybody's going to have a different answer on that. And I think it's going to depend on, like, the victors are going to tell the story about things that were worth saving versus those that weren't, right? So, like, transition happens. Somebody lands on the other side. They're going to tell a story about, oh, no, we saved the biggest thing, and the other guys were secondary, you know? It's probably going deeper than that, because sacrifice has a huge power in human culture and the forming of religion. Religion is blood. That's all it is. Religion is But yeah, let's leave that to another discussion on Girard or some shit.
Yeah, I think next week we can go into that deeper. And I'm actually, your book should be arriving in a minute. So once I get that, I'll be looking through for some chapters, and we'll go through that.
Nice.
I had a thought. Oh, well, here it is. So imagine you're a soldier, and you're an American soldier who's fought for Coca-Cola. You want, the main thing, you don't really care about religion. You kind of care about your freedoms, but the main thing is your Coca-Cola. And this is like 1930s or 40s. So then you're fighting the Nazis, and a time machine experiment goes haywire, and you end up now in the future. And you get back, and they say, well, you're lucky. You won the war, and freedom of speech, all those things. Those are pretty much gone. Like, you didn't care about, but Coca-Cola is still here, and this is great. That's all I want. And you give you a Coca-Cola, and you taste it, and you say, this doesn't taste anything like Coca-Cola.
Fuck, that's a great premise for like a great book, a novel, a Netflix show.
It's not a real question. Just like feel with it.
And then what happens? Like, then he fucking smacks the guy with the Coca-Cola in the head, steals the time machine, comes back here, and just like becomes takes that old-timey advantage to rule this world, or vice versa. Does the guy who hands the Coca-Cola get shifty and start to rule the past with the knowledge from the future? It's like, I know stuff that's going to happen, and then he just like preemptively,
that's why there's
he goes
still
and
real.
tells people the secrets.
That's why there's still real Coca-Cola in Bolivia. Yeah, I like that. It's a good line.
Yeah, loads of Coke. Or he goes and he gives it to Hitler and tells him, "Yo, Normandy, dude, here's proof."
Right.
And then the whole thing. Right?
Man, have you seen the Stephen King show 1162 or 11/23/62 about JFK? It's the last thing I'll say, and then we'll just talk more next week. But you should see it. Basically, a guy goes back in time to try to stop JFK from being assassinated, and when he succeeds, it leads to an atomic war that happened because they didn't stop the atomic wars in the 60s. And the Cuban Missile Crisis went off and everything. So the world's far worse because he stopped one little, assassination.
See, immersion in fantasy, immersion in what a speculative scenario this is. This is a fantasy. This is a story, right? Immersion in narrative, especially if done with the tools of immersion that, right now you just spoke it. But if you had, cinema, VR, if you had the right music, immersive theater, right? Or even if you go further down the lane of like technologies of immersion, and if you think about, okay, what if we take this story, this scenario, and if you're primed for a week by meditation, by ritual design, to really believe this story, to really believe that the story that you just described, that, get into it, like method acting or possession, where would that lead? Like the ability to like zone into an alternative timeline, to an alternative space of reality. I think that's the cool thing, like that I want to point to. I don't want to address your story specifically, even though you should pitch that to Netflix. But I want to say that the ability to jump in and out of stories, to suspend disbelief, is the shamanic practice that is typical of priesthoods in transitional ages. It's what they say that Steve Jobs had when he had this gravitational field around which people would just be drawn into him and his self-belief and his whole fucking aura. The ability to craft one of those stories, maybe for yourself, maybe for others, and then just go into it, is incredibly empowering, because it is the stories that say what's right or wrong, what's moral, what's immoral, what's guilty, what's innocent. So I completely fucking swerved your question, but
that wasn't a real question. I didn't even have a question mark involved. I was just like, feel this way statement. And then you did. That was great.
There you go.
Dude, Fraga, this is great. I'm going to check out some of the super chats. We got some super chats here. Sticky Mark says, are we now all within 3 devils intervals? Just take that and run. I don't know. You can Google it. I don't know. Within 3 devils intervals. I'll look it up. What is the devil's interval? Superstition, unrealistic claims, devil's intervals,
Okay.
Multiple three-tones.
Tritones.
Tritones. I'll have to
It's
look
like
into this more.
Yeah, it's a sixth, it's a minor sixth, I think, or that, and then another one on top of it. Are we in that? Fine. Yeah, sure. Maybe we're not enough on the three devils intervals. Play it more, play it harder.
Right. Katie sends a super sticker. We appreciate that. All right, guys. Well, Fraga will be back. Thank you so much for doing this. And again, let's we'll set up in the Discord to have some people ask some philosophical questions, and this just become the most gnarly philosophical show there ever was. So that'll be good.
Absolutely. Ubermeme. That's what it's about.
Peace and love, sir, and New World Order.
Ciao.
So long as I'm in this Oval Office.